It was an early summer morning. My morning routine: drink a cup of water, fill a water bottle, then lightly stretch. Slip on my runners and run along the pier. Then I would come home and drink my first cup of coffee for the day while making myself breakfast. While running along the pier, there was a van parked at the small lookout. He stood at the front of his van, leaning against it, drinking from a disposable travel cup. He was clean-shaven, light brown jacket, jeans, and runners. I had a sinking feeling in my gut when I ran closer. I knew I should have listened to it. I should have turned and ran faster. Maybe then I would have seen the second man waiting behind the trees I had just ran past. I groaned from the pain radiating from the back of my head. A voice echoed into focus, and a light flashed into my eyes. "Help," I mumbled. "How old are you?" I hear from behind the flashing light. I'm 27. Your height?" "5. I was attacked." I shook my head from her hands and looked down. Restraints were wrapped around my wrists and ankles. "Your height?" she asked, again shoving the thin pen light into her pocket. What's this?" I asked, confused, my focus still on the restraints. "Her height is approximately 5'9". A male voice came across the room. I looked for the voice and seen the man in the lab coat sitting behind a desk. "Why am I restrained?" I asked, still confused. "So you don't hurt yourself or us when you woke up," he stated, never taking his eyes off his papers as he wrote. "I'm okay now," I said, looking around the room. White walls and cupboards on the far left side of the room. Another hospital bed and machines lined the walls. I was attacked," I said, looking up at the woman as she turned to walk away from me and to the man in the lab coat. "I know," he responded. "Where did the police find me?" I asked, watching them writing and flipping through paper. They remained silent as I asked again and began to tear up before asking, Was I assaulted?" I asked, fighting back tears. The man looked up and shook his head. "No, they didn't. We need our subjects relatively unharmed." "Subjects?" I asked, looking down to my hands and lightly pulling at the cuff on my arm. Panic and fear crept throughout my body. This isn't right. Nothing about this is right. Fighting against the restraints. "Give her..." "Yeah," he motioned with his hand, dismissing the woman. She nodded, walking next to the bed, stopping in front of the mobile cabinet and pulling a drawer open, she pulled out a small vial and syringe. I screamed for help, praying for anyone, for anything to hear me. In my thrashing and screaming, I barely felt the needle and cool liquid flow through my arm. I don't know how long I've been here. I stare at the ceiling and walls for hours. Every syringe they've given me makes my head feel cloudy. I can barely think. The syringes hurt once in a while, but they sedate me, supposedly. It always feels like fire is running throughout my veins. Then I'm made to stand in what looks to be a large warehouse. I'm told to stare at a man in front of me and push him. How? I can barely stand with what I've been given. It always ends the same. Vomiting, seizures, or beatings. The first syringe almost killed me. I never seen that doctor again after that. He just seemed to have disappeared. I also tried asking where he went, which resulted in the butt of a gun to the face. The blood blinded my vision, and I was taken to where medical was. I assumed it was medical because it's where I woke up when I was abducted. And of course, the equipment. That looks bad, said the man, turning to look at me. Take care of her. I was haphazardly thrown onto the bed closest to the door. I silently sighed to myself as the guard walked out of the room, slamming the door. What happened? He asked, pulling a small kit from the cupboard next to him. I asked a question. I replied, shifting to sit up. Yeah, that would do it, he muttered under his breath. I smiled weakly as he sat next to me with a tray of packaged supplies. It turned out he wasn't a doctor, but a technician with a limited medical background. He was here until the new doctor returned. He seemed nice, kind, friendly. Until I came to, and somehow I ended up in my room with no memory of how I got there. Every time I wake up, I feel a tiny piece of me fade away. My sanity is holding by a thread. The only thing, the only person keeping me grounded sat beneath my folded hands. I'm not going to stay here. We're not going to stay here. I withered in pain as the contraction shot throughout my body. While I could hear the doctor's calm voice lull throughout the screams of my agony to breathe, The simple command was of no comfort, as I involuntarily pushed, whether I did or did not. Fear was of no concern in this moment. Stop pushing. I need you to wait until I gripped the bed's steel railings and, bearing down with all of my strength, pushed my child out. In between jagged breaths, I heard a piercing cry. I smiled weakly as I seen the nurses shuffle to the far end of the white sterile room. Why didn't you wait for security? The door on my left swung open, bouncing off the wall as it made contact. The protocol was to wait for security, and she was to be sedated, the guard barked, approaching the doctor. There was no time. She doesn't do well with sedatives. Where is she going to go? You put this entire facility in danger. The only danger was not having the baby properly delivered. I turned my head to the side, still with a weak smile. I held my arms open, waiting for the nurse to place my firstborn into. The tiny bundled white cloth covered nearly every inch of their body, their pink face new to the world. Boy or girl? I asked, oblivious to the commotion around me. Take it away from her, the guard shouted, ripping my left arm from my tiny infant. I held on tighter with my right, afraid of them dropping from my embrace. The familiar click of the handcuffs sending me crashing into reality. No, I was good. I cried, reaching for my baby as he was taken from me. Now, this is protocol. You know that. Just give us some time. We still need to take the baby for some tests, okay? The doctor's voice remained calm, but the look behind his eyes told me otherwise. Okay, I whined, refusing to fight and risk never seeing my baby due to being difficult. I leaned back into bed, lying still as the guard continued to restrain me. When can? Soon. The doctor smiled, turning away to follow the petite nurse who held my baby out of the room. I'm sure Mr. Claren will let you see your baby in a few hours. Stop speaking to the subjects as if they're what? They're people? Because they are. Did you ever realize the people they kidnap have? I remained silent, listening to both guards on either side of me argue about ethics. I knew I would be wheeled and thrown back into my room. My tiny 5 by 8 foot room. I knew every tiny paint chip, every slight fade of paint, crevice, and tile. We will be back for you, you know, the guard said, closing the door. I nodded, burying my face against my pillow. I don't know his name, but he was always my favorite. No one could ever know, because if they did, he would be killed in front of me, just to know what I would do, what I could do. They have dozens of guards with keypads and cards, guns with sedatives, and live rounds. The hallways have no signs to indicate where the exit to my freedom. My baby. I won't fight. I promise. I'll take the drugs and do the experiments.
Maybe there's another way.
I froze in fear of the deep, ominous voice, my breathing picking up to a rapid speed as I had an overwhelming need to run for my life.
They can't see me. They can't hear me. But I've always been here. From the first time they called for me. They don't deserve my time. But you. I think you will too.
If I wasn't exhausted from giving birth, I would have been slamming on the door. But would I? It's been so long since I've asked for help. I would just be beaten into unconsciousness. Is it even worth asking?
No, they wouldn't help. And you would be beaten. They have your child bound to the bed with tubes extending from her body.
Her, but they promised. I was good. I did and took what was asked of me, please.
They have no intention of returning the child. Just a few more experiments using it as a vessel, then it will be disposed of.
Please, help me. Every muscle in my body constricted. I couldn't breathe as it felt I was being suffocated. My veins filled with decay, completely foreign to me. Then my eyes snapped open. I calmly sat up in my bed, swinging my feet to the side. I could feel the cool, tiled floor beneath them. I stood with no pain, no exhaustion, no hesitation. I walked to the door and turned the handle, breaking the door handle clean off along with the door. The floor sirens were booming and the floodlights were turned on, dimming the hallway. Taking one step forward. Get back into your room, I heard from down the hallway.
Run.
I whispered, turning toward the guard's hurried footsteps. My head snapped to the left. I could hear a loud crack, but felt no pain. Shoot to kill. I ran toward the guards, the floor beneath me breaking with each step. Raising my hand, I slammed each guard into the floor and walls. Blood and skull cracked, shattered, and splashed, pooling on the floor and streaked the walls. The metallic scent of blood filling the air. Still walking forward, I could hear footsteps running away from me. The sirens whirled throughout the hall. I kicked the stairwell door in and proceeded down 2 flights of stairs and into the next hallway. Nurses, doctors, and engineers scurried down the hallway from me as I approached the lab.
Open this door.
The unholy vibrato echoed out of my mouth, causing the male technician to stumble backward, tripping onto the floor, helplessly pushing the emergency help button from where he sat. I reached for the handle, twisting both handle and door as if it were made of tissue, throwing it to the side, picking up the technician by the throat.
Where is my baby?
I glanced down to see the front of his pants, soaking wet as urine hit the floor. Down the hall, he squeaked. I squeezed my fingers, crushing his windpipe, then throwing him across the room. I stared at his lifeless body. It was too quick. He should have suffered longer, the way he made me suffer. Following the glow of the only lit room in the hall, I wait outside, tapping on the door's window.
Open this door.
The petite nurse stared through the window at me, and against the protest of the other people in the room, she visibly shivered as she reached for the handle. With a quick twist of the handle, she stepped back, nearly running into the wall behind her. I could see a small plastic, translucent box with thin tubing coming from the designated holes on the sides. An incubator. Her tiny naked body laid still. The soft beep of the monitor let me know she was still alive. I was careful to pry open the incubating chamber as not to disturb her slumber. You can't, without tearing my focus. I could hear a gurgled gasp and bones cracking. The tearful gasp of no reassured me he was dead.
Help me.
I turned my attention to the petite nurse. She nodded through her tears with each quiet, careful step. She removed the tubes from my daughter, wrapping her in a white cotton blanket. She held her out to me. Cradling her, I fell to the floor, convulsing in a fit of coughs, blood pouring from my mouth. In the midst of my fit, I heard a small stampede of footsteps coming into the room. Get her on the floor!
I thought this is what you wanted.
I laughed. I can feel my sanity begin to fade, or at least what was left of it. Their guns raised, I continued laughing as I took notice of the Bunsen burner was still lit on the counter. The flame flickered to life, combusting and consumed the room. The morning air filled my lungs, and the leaves rustled under my feet.
This is it. Are you ready?
Yes, I replied, kneeling down, laying my daughter next to me, and stared up at the trees, and then down to my daughter, quietly asleep. Wait, I think I heard something. There. Adam. No, just hold on, he said, walking to the edge of the forest. It's a woman and a baby. John, call an ambulance, Adam yelled, running to the woman. Adam tapped and gently touched the baby, and hearing a light whine, he cradled the infant, removing the infant from the undoubtedly dead woman. Her skin was gray and pale, swollen and bruised on her neck and along her arms and legs. The blood smeared across her face. He turned away, afraid of expelling the contents of his stomach and contaminating the scene. He cradled the infant closer, returning to his friend.